Morning. Welcome to this December 18th, 2023 meeting of the Norfolk City Council. We'll call the meeting to order and call your attention to the Open Meetings Act posted here in the council chambers. If you now please join me in rising for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Grandfist.
Here.
Arms. Here. Webb.
Here.
McCarthy.
Here.
Murin.
Here.
Snorton.
Here.
Boston.
Here.
Hilbrand.
Here.
Okay, with that, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
Would then look for a motion to approve the full agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
All right, that takes us to item number 14 on the council agenda under special presentations. We have two special presentations tonight. The first is a check presentation from Mike Wingate, Tom Sheath, and Brian Adams for new pickleball courts at Liberty Pell Park. Welcome, gentlemen. And to introduce them, Nate Powell, our City Parks and Rec Director.
Mayor and Council, I'd like to introduce Mr. Wingate and Mr. Sheath. They would like to present us tonight with a check for $300,000, along with Mr. Adams as well, who is not here this evening, I understand. And yep, and if they have a few words, I'd like to let them have a moment here.
Well, thank you. I knew pickleball would be exciting, but I see there's a lot of people here, so maybe that's what this is all about tonight. As a lot of you know, we did through our Foundation of Integrity, we did some park equipment at the Liberty Park, and Tom and I and our other partner Brian Adams felt that we wanted to give more back to the community, and one of the fastest growing sports, one of the things that brings communities and peoples together more than anything out there right now is pickleball. And I'm an avid player myself. I don't try to get Tom going on it. So, we've seen that there was a real need for it in Norfolk, and we hope that all Norfolk enjoys it and the community enjoys it, and that you guys embrace it and get a chance to get out there and play and make it work for everybody. So,
Well, first I want to say thank you for what you've already done at Liberty Bell. It was incredible with the playground that was constructed in literally a 12-hour period with all of your employees as volunteers. That investment certainly helping us make our parks better. And now this, believe it or not, it's not every day, every meeting that somebody brings a $300,000 check with them.
plus, free pickleball lessons.
There you go. So thank you so much. We appreciate all the time and energy and effort that you're contributing to make Norfolk a better place.
Norfolk's a great community, and it's running an area, a lot of them come over, and it's very important for us to get back at. And this is one small way of us getting back to enjoy what many others do, for hopefully many generations to come.
Well said. Thanks so much.
Can we get a photo?
Let's get a picture.
Then we'll let you guys get to the real.
Okay, how to top that? Nate, it's going to be your job. Second special presentation tonight is a Parks and Recreation Master Plan update from our own Parks and Rec Director, Nate Powell.
Mayor and Council, we have been working on a master plan since July. Most of the work up to this date is gathering information from the public, doing some public meetings, stakeholder meetings, meetings with the subcommittee, the Culture and Rec subcommittee, and some public meetings as well. And also just gathering information of our park system. And let's get my...
Pull your mic a little bit closer.
Got it. All right. Okay, and one of the things that we just completed was the survey results from the public surveys that we've done. One of them was a statistically valid survey. That's the results that are presented tonight. After following the statistically valid survey, we did a public survey. They're tabulating those results as we speak. These are about 120-page reports on the survey results. And so we'll just run through some highlights on kind of what we're seeing. I don't have any, I'm not coming to any conclusions tonight or anything. That'll be presented to you in first week meeting in February, where Pros Consulting will come out and give their results and their findings on what they're seeing. So just kind of where we are today, we've done the site and facility assessments, the park classification and level of service. We've done some, a lot of plan reviews. Those are the plans that we currently have. Statistically valid survey, our online surveys, public meetings that I mentioned here. The few things that we have left are the capital improvement plan, funding and revenue planning, the strategic action plan, our program review, and the mapping from our classification. And we'll get to that here shortly. This is our demographics of our community. We're just showing what our demographics are, and you can see that we hit those targets with our survey results. I'll show you that in a second. This is done by the ETC Institute. They do surveys. This is what they do. And this is where they brought us the statistically valid survey, and this came from the ETC Institute. And our survey results did have a diverse results. We did have 15% Hispanic participation in our surveys, and you can see other races as well. And then if you look at the household income, we've reached all income levels in the survey. We hit all age groups, so these are who's in the household, so all age groups were represented in our survey as well. How many years have you lived in Norfolk? As you can see, 68% have lived in Norfolk 21 years or longer. These are the unmet needs in our community, according to the survey results, with the indoor swimming pool being the most unmet need, with swimming, beach, sledding hill, indoor playground, indoor running track, indoor ice rink. The community feels that indoor facilities are unmet needs in our community. So those are some results with that. That's the trend, is indoor facilities, and we can get into that here as well. And there is also outdoor recreation in there as well, swimming, beach, sledding hill, natural areas. Those are all important unmet needs that we do not have here in our community. Top priorities for investment would be paved trails, or multi-use paved trails. That's standard nationwide when in these surveys, is to see the trails up front. The indoor swimming pool as well is a top priority for investment from our survey, those that took the survey. Natural areas, wildlife habitat, swimming, beach. Again, this is kind of the same list that we just went through. As you can see, 10 of the in the top 10, there's several indoor facilities that we're missing. Whoops. This is how they would support funding. So those that chose top choice, hotel tax was actually number 1 in top choice. But if you tabulate top, second, and third choice, the sponsorship and advertising signage is supported. A hotel tax to support some of these improvements is above 50%. And then as you get down to the bond, as you see, that's about the percentage that our bond went to last time when we had the swimming pool on there. So that's showing pretty accurate on what people would support. This is a priority. This is a level of support for potential actions. It's a little different way of asking the question. Restrooms is number 1 here. Adding trees and improving the tree canopy was right up top as well. Improving existing paving walking trails is right up there. So that's those are some top things for what their level of support for potential actions would be. All right, top for priorities for investments in programming. The public would like to see more adult fitness and wellness programs, nature programs, outdoor adventure, fishing, active senior programs. Those are the top priorities that they want to see in our programming. All right, how often have you used parks? This is Skyview. It's not surprising to be on the top, Tahoe being the second. The flood control path is highly used. River Point Square beat out Aquaventure in terms of most usage, or being frequently, sometimes or rare. And then Aquaventure and on down. How would you rate the overall quality of the parks? 78% say good or excellent. That's right around the national average of 81%. So we're very close. How satisfied are you with the services that we offer? The amount of green space, the overall quality of our sports fields, the amount of developed parkland, maintenance of our facilities, all ranked top. One of the bottom ones was they're not satisfied with the indoor recreation space, as you can see down below. We saw that as a trend in our survey results. Okay, and where do people recreate in our community? The dark is the local results, and the light blue is the national average. As you can see, the YMCA is 51% of where people recreate. And that's also showing that the other half of the community, or 49%, does not use the YMCA for their recreation. And as you can see, there's other amenities, the churches, local Parks and Recreation Department as well. That would be us. We're down probably to 38%. The national average is closer to that 50%. And that would be lack of indoor facilities from our understanding of that. Okay. And where do this was taken from credit card where people spend their money. Then we are 23% higher than the national average for visiting indoor water parks outside our community. So that was not surprising given the results that we saw on indoor water parks. We keep seeing this as a trend. And then you can see the other items there where we spend over the national average, visiting zoos, overnight camping, what we spend on sports and rec equipment. So those are some results there. Again, the community engagement process was with community focus groups, public input sessions. Our statistically valid survey, we had a goal. The goal to be statistically valid was 375. We hit 425. Our online survey hit another 174. So we're right at that 600 mark for survey results. Stakeholders, and we did stakeholder meetings, staff focus groups, subcommittee, and also the board as well have seen presentations over the past several months. We're doing assessments right now. We're kind of wrapping those up, and that's going to give us our inventory and our inventory matrix. I'll show you that here shortly. We're going to be doing those assessments. And then here's the matrix as well. It looks at every piece of property that we manage or maintain within the system or within the city. And it also puts the amenities at each location. And we'll have the roundabouts and everything that we mow in there as well. And that's going to get us our summaries here. As you can see, we'll be looking at the conditions of our facilities. We'll be looking at our strengths and our opportunities for every park that we have in our system. From there, we're going to be doing the capital improvement plan. This is where we have 3 different tiers for the capital improvements. The sustained alternatives, that's basically managing what we have. Expanded service alternatives, what do we want to include? Tonight, we get to knock the pickleball courts off of our list, because the national average for that is 3 pickleball courts for a community our size. So we're going to be able to put in 4. So that's going to be a great addition. And then our visionary alternatives, which would probably be water parks and things that are really community driven and not driven by city staff. Okay, and the next steps is our operational review, funding strategies, the needs prioritization, the capital improvement plan, funding and revenue planning, and the strategic action plan. So we'll be coming back to you with these items in first week of February, and then we're looking for council's direction at that point, and then we'll bring in final in April once we hear from council. Is there any questions at this point?
Well done, Nate. Appreciate the time and effort that's gone into taking on this process. And I know that you've spearheaded it almost from the moment you got here. And now we're starting to see why. To have a formal evaluation of need, a community survey. When's the last time this has been done in the city of Norfolk? Do you have any idea?
It was 2010. They did a master
2010.
plan,
Okay.
and Aquaventure came out of that.
Very good.
Yep.
Okay. Has this presentation been before the Parks and Rec Board to date?
This presentation has been before the Parks and Rec Board and the subcommittee back in, I believe, in August.
Okay.
And but we added tonight the survey results, which we will be given also to the board on Thursday this week.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay, that moves us from special presentations to public hearings and related action. Item number 16 on the council agenda. I will open this public hearing to receive a report on findings and suggestions from the Economic Development Citizen Advisory Review Committee as required by state statute section 18-2715. And to give us that report, Randy Gates, our city finance officer.
Yes, Your Honor. The citizens serving on the city's Citizens Advisory Review Committee are Cindy Morrow, Brandon Day, Aaron Otten, Jan Einspar, and Kathy Means. I serve as an ex officio non-voting member of the CARC. Statutes require once every 6 months the CARC report to the city on their findings and suggestions for improvement of public hearing, and that's the purpose of this public hearing. The CARC report is included in the agenda packet. We met by email for this time frame because there was really no activity to be considered. $32.32 is the balance in the LB 840 fund, which was some delinquent property tax received during that period. There are several LB 840 loans outstanding, neither of which have had their first status report due yet. The Women's Empowering Lifeline has an LB 840 loan of $103,129 to help establish their child care facility, and their first status report is due January 31st. These are forgivable loans, and in order for the Wells loan to be forgiven, they need to create 11 new full-time equivalent positions and retain those for 2 years. The other loan is a $200,000 loan to NeighborWorks. They have their first status report due February 28, 2024. This was to establish a $1.5 million Norfolk Rural Housing Fund. They have to create at least 30 workforce housing units in order for that loan to be forgiven. The CARC found that the city's economic development program was operating in compliance with the budget and the voter-approved economic development plan. I'd answer any questions.
Thank you, Randy. Any questions? Okay, this is a public hearing, so anyone wishing to make comment can do so now. Seeing and hearing no one, I will move to close the hearing and proceed to item 17 and open this public hearing to consider the redevelopment plan for the Sunset Plaza redevelopment project. And once again, Randy, could you give us some opening background on this, please?
Yes. North Kings Highway LLC submitted a TIF application for redevelopment of the Sunset Plaza Mall. On June 5th, the Economic Development Subcommittee reviewed the application and voted to move forward with acceptance of the redevelopment plan for this project. The November 6th Community Development Agency meeting, the agency accepted the redevelopment plan and forwarded it to the Planning Commission for their review and recommendation. Planning Commission held a hearing on their plan at the November 21st meeting and recommended approval of the plan on a 6-0 vote. The plan itself is included in the agenda packet, and it, as I said, is for redevelopment of the Sunset Plaza Mall. The redeveloper intends to undertake these renovations in 2 phases. The first phase is to develop the old Herberger's space for Kohl's, Planet Fitness, and TJ Maxx. The construction on phase 1 was undertaken in an expeditious manner because the leases for Kohl's and TJ Maxx required that they have those available early this coming year, and they didn't have time to wait for the plan to be approved. The TIF, if approved, will be used for phase 2 renovations, and those renovations include improvements to the sidewalk, parking lots, landscaping, exterior facade enhancements, renovation of hallways and food court, and then interior tenant improvements for the remainder of the mall. The redeveloper will not be able to undertake these improvements but for TIF, and such a redevelopment project couldn't be completed without the TIF assistance, the phase 2 portion. The cost of TIF eligible costs are expected to be $15,463,000. Total project costs are expected to be over $22.5 million. The redeveloper is requesting TIF in the amount of $3,500,000, and as I mentioned, he indicated the project is not economically feasible without TIF. Without TIF, the ROI over a 5-year period is estimated to be 4.76%. With TIF, the redevelopment project's ROI is estimated to be 9.83%. On December 4th, 2023, the agency voted to recommend approval of the Sunset Plaza redevelopment plan to the City Council, and that's where we're at tonight. Representatives from the redeveloper are here tonight and can answer your questions.
Thank you, Randy. Developers are welcome to come open on the hearing if they'd like.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. Andrew Willis, 233 South 13th Street in Lincoln, on behalf of the redevelopers, and Andres is here as well if he needs to answer any questions specifically. As Randy mentioned, we've been through multiple steps to get here, so and it's the mall, so generally we know what we're trying to accomplish. So I want to go over the redevelopment plan, a few of the highlights, and then really hit on a couple of things that have came up and have been issues or seem to be issues right now with this project. Obviously, it's the renovation of the mall. It's going to be done in 2 phases. Phase 1, the old Herberger site, which is going to be Kohl's, TJ Maxx, and Planet Fitness. That piece is going to be done, right? That is underway. That the hope is, Kohl's and TJ Maxx are going to open in the spring. That's a great start. That's going to happen. Phase 2, the rest of the mall. That's the rest of that parking lot, getting that in the facade, renovating the interior spaces, all those public spaces inside, the food court, all of that. That's where the TIF is needed, is to take phase 1, the piece that's being done, and to expand that to renovate the entire mall. Again, obviously this fits in very well with the comp plan and all those pieces. From a timing perspective, and again, and really the slide up here kind of, roughly I've highlighted, phase 1, phase 2. So again, you're gonna have your Kohl's, TJ Maxx, Planet Fitness, that entryway will be done. So the question is, with TIF, the remainder of that mall and some of those other improvements. That's really where this comes into play. And really with the TIF approval, that phase 2 will commence either next year, 2024 or 2025, and it's going to be about a 24-month construction period to undertake all those phase 2 improvements to get to that full renovation of the mall. And again, really, that piece is what doesn't happen without the TIF. Now, there's a question at the November 6th CDA meeting, and I think other meetings since then, on the but-for test. You know, what does this meet that test? So, Section 1821.16 of the Community Development Law says if there's TIF involved in a project, the City Council may approve the redevelopment plan if it finds that the redevelopment project in the plan would not be economically feasible without the use of tax increment financing. It would not occur in the community redevelopment area without the use of tax increment financing, and the costs and benefits are in the long-term interest of the city. So, from a legal perspective, I think the key is that the but-for test doesn't mean nothing is going to happen. It means the project as presented in the redevelopment plan is not going to happen. If you like that project in the plan, that's what needs TIF. So again, without TIF, you get Kohl's, TJ Maxx, and Planet Fitness. That gets done. That's not the project in the plan. The good example I always use is one out of Lincoln. It was a brewery, Plowshare Brewery on P Street. That project was going forward. They were building the brewery, and the city of Lincoln had a bike path, a public bike path that was right in front of that on P Street. So they said, hey, we'd like to use TIF off of that, the increment you're creating to do the bike path improvements. Redeveloper didn't necessarily care, but they were going to build no matter what. So the question is, well, hold on. That project's going in no matter what. And the answer is, well, no, it wasn't. That building is going to get built, but there's going to be no bike lane improvements without the TIF. So that's done, and it was a little bit similar to this in the sense that the timing was not the normal timing, but the city said, we see a public need, we see a public good from this, and we can use that TIF to help with the bike lane. That's one concrete example that I point to as a similar situation where you're taking something that we've got the renovation's underway. We're going to get some partial renovations, but it still doesn't mean, but for TIF, this is going to go through the project as designed. The other one I would use, and we see this fairly often, is affordable housing. A developer might come in and say, and this is just a hypothetical, but I can build 30 units. I can build a 30-unit multifamily, and I can either charge market rate, or I can reduce the rents and limit it to people who make 80% of AMI. So I can make it affordable. One of those I can do without TIF. Either way, I can build 30 units, but one of those I can do without TIF, and one of them I can do with TIF. And so again, the developer can say, I'll put 30 units up, but either you get them affordable or you don't. And then maybe that's something that a city wants, maybe it isn't, but again, it's not that nothing will happen in the area. It's that the project as designed won't occur without TIF. That's what the statute requires, the community development law. And so that's, again, under that, what I consider the proper reading of the community development law, but for TIF, phase 2 doesn't occur. So I think that we don't have an issue of legality that's been brought up a couple different times from different people. The TIF request, up to $3.5 million. Again, that's based on, what we believe we're going to have the base value at $4.5 million. That was the valuation prior to the purchase, but nothing's happened since then. That valuation is being appealed. We're working on that. Worst case scenario, if that doesn't go down, the increment's going to be smaller. So really, when we say $3.5 million, that the request is that would be the maximum from the city. That would allow up to $3.5 million if we can bring that base value down to where we think we will be able to. And if the final value is $24 million and we have an appraisal based on all the plans that are projected, that it would meet $24.5 million. Again, that's just an appraisal right now. Again, I guess the other piece of this, so the TIF uses. We've identified it's about $22 million project. I've identified about $15 million of TIF uses, but 11 of that's the site acquisition. I know there's been an issue and a concern with using this for site acquisition. So I guess I'll say two things. First of all, again, looking at the specific language in the community development law, section 18-2117.03, that's kind of identifies what we can use TIF for prior to approval. And that says a redevelopment project shall not provide for the reimbursement of costs that incurred prior to approval of the redevelopment project except for costs relating to preparation of materials and applications, preparation of the cost-benefit analysis, preparation of the contract, the preparation of financing instruments, land acquisition, due diligence activities, surveys, environmental studies, site demolition, and site preparation. Statute specifically says you can use TIF for land acquisition prior to approval. So again, we don't have a legal issue there. Now that said, we've also got plenty of uses in phase 2 for $3.5 million. So if that's a real hard concern of this council, we don't have to apply any of it towards the acquisition cost because there's plenty of eligible uses. Otherwise, again, out of that 15 million, 11 was site acquisitions. That leaves $4.5 million roughly. So again, of the phase 2 improvement. So not an issue if that's a real concern. But again, legally, that's not a concern. Legally, the state legislature has said you can use TIF to reimburse for site acquisition that you purchased before the project was approved. So again, just from a legal issue, we shouldn't have any issues there. But practically, I don't see any issues in just the phase 2 cost as well. The final thing I wanted to just go over, because I wanted to make sure it was very clear to I guess anybody who was confused. Can we go to the next? I got a couple scenarios. So this next slide here. This is just a graphical representation of the TIF that I put together. So that the slide on my left. Again, that's sort of what we've projected the TIF to look like. Starting at $4.5 million base value, completed value of $24 million. So you have a $19 million increment, or about $382,000 of tax increment. So in this scenario here, that blue is the taxes that would continue to go to the current valuation and what would continue to go to all the county, school district, city, everybody else. The orange is what would be used to reimburse for those TIF eligible costs over the 15-year period. Now, what happens if this value comes in lower? That's the second chart. I just hypothetically said, let's say it only valued as at $19 million. So you got a $14.5 million increment. Maybe that'd be, whether it's high or low, but ultimately it's, all right, so you're short there, right? We would project it out a $382,000 tax increment per year, but in this scenario where it only comes in assessed at 19, you're only gonna have $284,000, so you're about $100,000 short of TIF. What happens there? Well, that's my gray line, or my gray bars on that. But the key there is that orange is still, again, what comes back from the county, and that's the actual tax increment that's generated by this project. That gray doesn't exist. That's risk the developer took and lost, and they have to come up with the financing somewhere else. It doesn't come from other taxes, other city funds, anything else. That is, it's phantom there because it doesn't exist, but that's all risk on redeveloper. So I just wanted to make sure, again, I know it's probably not necessary for me to go over that, but this solely is tied to the project and what's created. If it doesn't come in at that value, that's the risk the redeveloper's taking, and hopefully we don't have that. But again, that's only on the redeveloper. And then I guess the same. We don't have to go through the second slide. It's the same thing. If it's what happens if it takes a little bit longer to get up to that value. But ultimately, point is solely from that mall site. That's where the TIF is being used. It doesn't affect taxes of anybody else or the use of any other taxes throughout the city. I'm happy to answer any questions. Hopefully I can maybe reserve some time for rebuttal if there's other issues that need to be brought up or questions that come up later, but I'm happy to answer any questions about the project.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions?
No, I just want to make a comment. I think this is laid out really well, probably better than the first time laid out, so just want to comment on that.
Okay.
You talked a little bit about specifics for phase 2 improvements. Can you rehash that a little bit? What is planned, anticipated for phase 2 improvements?
Phase 2. So essentially the rest of the mall. So the state of the parking lot. That's a pretty extensive cost to finish that parking lot out. The facade, the exterior improvements, but then interior improvements to the food court, interior to the public bathrooms in there, the hallways, essentially all those public spaces, and then they'll obviously be finishing out any of those tenant spaces, but just to get that, I call it the quasi-public areas of the mall, the hallways, the food court, the bathrooms, all those pieces, to get that refreshed. Really the key to getting those secondary tenants. You've got your anchor tenants from phase 1, Kohl's, TJ Maxx, and then you've got the improvements to phase 2. So those two things are really going to drive bringing in those additional tenants, the newer tenants, and so That's really the bulk of the work on phase 2.
Thank you. Any other questions, Ranger?
What, Andrew, why do we mention phase 1 in the TIF application if it's not needed for TIF dollars?
Because it's all part of the same. There's only one lot here, so the phases are really construction phases. This is not like a phase TIF project like you've seen before in some cases where you have 2 parcels or separate TIF clocks. There's only one parcel here. The mall is all one legal parcel, so it's. So in that sense, there's only one phase. And so I was trying to distinguish between the construction that's happening now, and probably being to avoid the confusion that we didn't avoid and it still exists with the work that's happening prior to construction on that site. But it is mainly because it's only one legal parcel. If this was subdivided and maybe had 2 parcels, then you'd only have to talk about that secondary parcel.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing, so anyone wishing to comment can do so now. Again, as per typical protocol, we will limit individual testimony to 5 minutes, and Brianna, the city clerk, will mark when you have a minute left.
Jim McKenzie, you won't have to worry about the 5 minutes with me. First of all, I completely understand the desire to support this project. I wish the developer great success with it. I think the mall renovation would be wonderful, and I'm glad that it's continuing. However, I have concerns with the specific development plan and the TIF amount in this project. The plan includes phase 1 and phase 2 costs. Phase 1 costs are not eligible for TIF because that construction is already underway. It does not pass the state statute but-for clause. Phase 2 costs are the only costs eligible for TIF. The development plan gives the developer the benefit of TIF on the phase 1 improvements by allowing the base value to omit phase 1 costs, but allowing the final assumed value to include phase 1 costs. If the assessed value is left at the current county assessed value of $9.3 million, and the phase 1 improvements of $7.5 million are added to the currently assessed value to determine a new base value, then the amount of TIF the developer is eligible for would be reduced by approximately 60%. The amount of TIF tax breaks this plan allows the developer to qualify for, including interest, is $5.7 million. The total amount of the proposed phase 2 improvements, which are the only improvements that qualify for TIF consideration, are estimated to be $3.975 million. The developer under this plan will collect 143% of his investment in the phase 2 improvements. Is this what state statutes intended? I hope not, and I think not. In my discussions with Randy Gates, the ROI calculations included in this redevelopment plan include phase 1 costs, even though phase 1 does not qualify for TIF reimbursement. That doesn't make any sense to me and calls into question the justification for TIF. Nebraska Statute 18-2116 calls for the governing body to require that the redevelopment project would not be economically feasible without TIF. How can you come to this conclusion with a plan and an ROI that mixes ineligible and eligible costs in the ROI calculations? This redevelopment plan includes these ineligible costs, phase 1 costs, all the way through it. This is the only TIF plan I've ever seen that includes non-eligible costs. I asked Randy if they had ever seen or ever done a redevelopment plan like this before, and he said no. Since this plan is completely unique and allows the developer to recoup tax benefits far in excess of his phase 2 improvement costs, I recommend that the city submit this plan to the state auditor for his review prior to approval. That way you'll know if this unique plan follows state statute or not. Perhaps it does, and then you can proceed as you see fit. If not, then you'll know you need to adjust the plan. We can debate the pros and cons of TIF at a later time, but we need to make sure the plan, as you have presented, follows state statutes. In full disclosure, I have contacted the state auditor's office and I have forwarded them a copy of this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else wishing to make public comment?
All right. Hey guys, Austin Haygood. I'm the president and CEO of the Norfolk Area Chamber of Commerce. I definitely won't take the 5 minutes at all, but we've met as the board, and I want to let you guys know that the chamber definitely 100% supports this project. You have the chamber's full support. The chamber board, of course, is made up of a cross section of business owners and employees throughout the community, and we're all for it, and we're here to support you. In fact, I've got a letter that we'd like to enter into the record for each one of you from the board, but just want to say we totally support this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Council is here tonight, and he could address some of the specific legal issues that were raised.
Okay. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, Randy. Excuse me. Mr. Mayor, Council, Michael Sand, 1700 Farnham Street. As Randy indicated, I am the city's TIF council. So I think as far as the gentleman's concerns, I think that there's a little crossing of wires as to how this all fits together, specifically with respect to eligibility of costs and how the law looks at a project or a TIF project. As Andrew said, it's about the project presented, and the project presented, despite the unusual time frame of it, meaning that some of it is already underway, is a single project as it's laid out in the redevelopment plan. And so the inclusion of certain costs in phase one, whether or not, those would be determined on whether they're eligible or not by when this plan is approved. Anything before tonight, if the council chose to adopt the plan, would be ineligible under the plain language of the statute. Anything as a part of phase one that was completed after tonight, under the law at least, would be eligible. Now, it's my understanding that it may be the desire of the council and others to just limit what is deemed eligible or reimbursable to those phase two costs. And that's certainly possible, but this isn't the time to do it. The redevelopment plan just reflects the law. The time to do it will be in the redevelopment contract, which we're working on now, which could stipulate that, irrespective of whether, those phase one costs, whenever they occurred, and would otherwise be eligible under state statute, the city will only permit phase two costs as eligible. And there's a number of ways to verify that, and the city does a very good job. Randy does a very good job of verifying those costs. So, I'm happy to answer any specific questions, and it provides me no concern if this plan is sent to the state auditor. I have zero doubt in my mind what's being presented is legal under the community development law. So just wanted to reiterate that, and I realize that it is, unique, but my understanding of that is just it was a timing issue as far as having to start on that. I'm sure if they could, had their choice, it would have, they would have put everything after the plan was approved. But irrespective of those unique circumstances, it does nothing to affect the eligibility of TIF. The other thing I would say, just to address one of the specific comments, was there's no statutory basis to carve off or eliminate that base value, or rather include the base value of the phase one, because those aren't necessarily eligible costs under this project. That's a construct that doesn't exist under the statutes. It's a construct that doesn't exist in real life. There's what you would call district-wide TIF, where you have a number of already built improvements, and you do count the natural valuation. There's no, the division line or the dividing line between base value and incremental value is determined by the notice to divide filed with the county and stop. There's nothing else that legally determines that, and so there's no issues in that base valuation calculation with respect to what's in this plan. So happy to answer any questions that you have.
I got one that I thought of while you're talking about that of, is it substantial completion? Is it 100% completion by the time this is moved forward or voted on? And how do we know what was completed or not? So we know what's eligible for TIF or not, or maybe that's Randy or obviously the owner.
So I think it'll be real easy, because I do think the plan is that we're just going to say only phase 2 costs are eligible. So I don't think we're going to concern, that's my understanding of where we'd like to be. So it shouldn't be, I think it's pretty self-evident by the fact that the rest of the mall has had no work done to it, that, you know, only those costs outside of the you know, old Herberger's location would be eligible. So it shouldn't be too difficult. If that weren't the case, then it would require, you know, affidavits from architects and engineers and contractors to verify that. I don't think we'll have to get that detailed, but we will provide very clear and protective language, making sure that none of those costs would be deemed eligible.
And we always get invoices and documentation of TIFable cost before we distribute any TIF proceeds.
I do have a question. So is site acquisition eligible for those costs or not?
It is.
It is.
Explicitly under the statutes. Site acquisition is always, I say always. The only time when there might be a question about site acquisition is how far do you go back, right? If somebody acquired a property 20 years ago, maybe doesn't pass the, you know, the smell test, so to speak. But anything, you know, recent, however you want to clarify as recent, usually if a developer bought it with the purpose of building the project or doing the redevelopment, then that would be an eligible site acquisition cost, irrespective of when it took place.
Does statute address what's eligible when calculating ROI?
It doesn't. It does not provide an explicit calculation for ROI. What the city does, and I would say that Norfolk goes above and beyond for this calculation. So ROI goes back to the but-for test. So it's just another, you know, facet of that. Would the project occur but for the TIF? So some communities, you know, don't make you break it down into numbers and spreadsheets and provide an ROI. Some communities would just say, you know, provide a narrative of why you need it. So really, the ROI calculation that the city does is even going above and beyond probably what the statute requires. But to answer your question, no, it is not, you know, specifically laid out of what should be in that calculation and what shouldn't. But certainly the city's use of it, as far as I've been involved, which has been a number of years, has been, you know, I guess, like I said, above and beyond what a lot of communities do in Nebraska to meet that, make sure that it meets that but-for test.
Okay, Michael, just to rehash in a couple questions here. As you look at this, you know, clearly this redevelopment plan is isolating phase 2 from phase 1 as the only TIF eligible use. So you're as you stated, you're comfortable with a clear delineation there and a natural separation from those two phases as proposed.
I am, yes.
Okay. How long have you been working in community development law and in TIF projects specifically?
Yeah, so it's been probably about 8 years since I really, you know, got very involved with community development law with my current law firm, at which I'm a partner there at Baird Holm. Baird Home has a long history of lawyers that do community development law, so there's been a lot of good ones that came before me with a long-standing relationship with Norfolk.
Thank you. And Mr. Willis provided an example in Lincoln of a similarly timed project. Have you seen other projects or other examples of this?
Absolutely. Lincoln, like Andrew said, Lincoln does it. Omaha does it all the time. It's almost a factor of quid pro quo, is how they look at it. Or we could benefit off of this as the city because we want some sort of public improvement that the developer might, not have laid out in their initial site plans, but would benefit the city, which is exactly how TIF should be utilized, right? It's to provide a public benefit or provide public improvements in a way that doesn't increase the tax burden on the city as those improvements would normally do if the city were to build them themselves. So yes, I would definitely echo that it happens quite often.
Very good. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for your perspective and expertise.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to make comment? Okay, seeing and hearing no one, I will close the hearing and move to item 18. We look for a motion to consider resolution number 2023-66, approving the redevelopment plan for the Sunset Plaza redevelopment project.
I'll offer for consideration resolution number 2023-66.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion on this, council? Okay, hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Resolution 2023-66 is adopted.
All right, that takes us to our regular agenda. Item number 19 would look for a motion to consider approval of an interlocal agreement with the Village of Hayter, a municipal corporation, for the creation and organization of the Northeast Nebraska Regional Land Bank.
Your Honor, I'll be removing myself from discussion and voting on items 19 through 21.
I'll go ahead and make a motion for consideration of approval of the interlocal agreement.
Second.
Okay, motion second, and for some background on this, we'll hear from Danny Myers-Noley, our city attorney. Danny.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we get started, just a quick moment to say thank you to everybody on the council. This has been a long time coming. We've worked on this for a few years, and I know that there's been a lot of conversations surrounding the land bank, and it's good to finally be here. Also wanted to thank staff. There's a number of us, but a number of people on staff that put a lot of work and effort the last few years into that, namely Gary Brettschneider, Val Grimes, and Lyle Lutt. Put in a lot of hours, put in a lot of work, met with the Omaha Land Bank, the Municipal League. So I want to thank them. And also we have our partners, some representatives of our partner here, the Village of Hayter. And we invited all of the proposed board members here tonight. So there's a lot of them in attendance. So as far as the land bank itself, the creation of the land bank, there's 3 items before you tonight, 19, 20, and 21, that essentially create the land bank within the city of Norfolk. And the original Nebraska Municipal Land Bank Act, that was passed in 2013 by our legislature in response to concerns about dilapidated properties within Omaha and Sarpy County specifically. So at that time, the legislature passed that only as it pertains to Omaha and Sarpy County. However, after that, after 2014, when the Omaha Municipal Land Bank was formed, other municipalities and organizations started to advocate at that time to allow for smaller cities and villages within the state to have the same privilege that Omaha had. And Omaha exercised that beginning, yes, in 2014, and they were already having a lot of success. So other cities started to take notice and wanted the same ability to clean up their cities. So in 2020, LB 424 passed, which allowed every city and village within the state of Nebraska to have a land bank. However, with the amended legislation, only Omaha and Lincoln can have standalone land banks, while the remainder of Nebraska's municipalities are required to join with others using the Interlocal Cooperation Act. Due to the proximity of the Village of Hayter and the desire to grow a new land bank in a way that is controlled and sustainable, City of Norfolk staff worked with the Omaha Land Bank and a subcommittee of the Norfolk City Council to ultimately decide that the best way forward was to start the land bank with the Village of Hayter as our first partner. The Village of Hayter passed similar creation documents allowing for such partnership and the resulting land bank at its December 11, 2023 Village Board meeting. So the first document before you tonight is the interlocal agreement with the Village of Hayter, which, as I said before, they've already passed. We drafted that with the help of the Omaha Municipal Land Bank, as well as the League of Nebraska Municipalities, in accordance with the Land Bank Act itself. Because the act requires an interlocal agreement for the creation and existence of a land bank for cities other than Omaha and Lincoln, that is the first item on the agenda. The interlocal includes items that are required under the Land Bank Act and the Interlocal Cooperation Act, as well as best practices gleaned from a model given by the League in previous interlocal agreements that the City of Norfolk has been party to. The interlocal defines certain key terms under the Land Bank Act. It creates and provides for the organization of the land bank. It speaks to the purposes and powers of the land bank, the legal requirements for the board members, the general fund creation, and the initial anticipated allocation of costs between the City of Norfolk and the Village of Hayter. It speaks to the project initiation requirements and the process for the admission of future member municipalities, which we anticipate within 2 to 3 years. It also speaks to the dissolution process. It is this agreement combined with the Land Bank Act and the bylaws that are the governing documents for this land bank. And the bylaws will be voted on by the board. We anticipate that to be the 3rd week of January. The next item is the ordinance that creates the Northeast Nebraska Regional Land Bank within Chapter 12.1 of Norfolk City Code. While the ordinance is more optional than required under this section of the act, city staff opted to incorporate some key land bank language into our city code, and as such, that is the reason for the ordinance before City Council tonight. This is not a governing document for the land bank. It simply creates a space for the new organization within our city code. The final item on the agenda is the resolution, which appoints specific individuals to be the first land bank board. These members all submitted applications to the City of Norfolk to be part of such board, and some were contacted by city staff as potential candidates to ensure compliance with the act requiring specific knowledge and experience areas. These individuals will serve staggered terms and are all residents of the City of Norfolk. The voting members are all residents of the City of Norfolk. This resolution also includes the names of the non-voting members of the board that are required by this act. If there's any further questions in terms of, if you want me to get into what the land bank does, if you want kind of a summary of that, I'm happy to answer that as well.
I think that'd be great. Danny, obviously there's been a lot of work put in here to do this, and I think we would just be the 2nd, maybe 3rd land bank established in the state of Nebraska. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's another, the Omaha Land Bank's been in existence for almost 10 years. In terms of regional land banks, there's one that's in process, so we'd either be the first one or the second one, and that one is in, I think, southeast Nebraska.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about why this is important and why we believe this is a useful tool in enhancing our community's housing inventories.
Yes. So when we started talking as a staff about what our goals were for the land bank, we talked about the fact that we have a number of dilapidated properties within the City of Norfolk, properties that they're not turned over quick enough, they have issues, there's code violations, things of that nature. We also talked about this, especially in the last couple years, as the state has really focused on affordable housing and workforce housing, and seeing within our community a very significant need for folks that cannot afford houses to get into houses, to find new and creative ways to get people into houses that otherwise wouldn't be able to. So in talking as a group, the staff that I referenced earlier, the mission statement that we kind of came up with was to turn vacant, abandoned, and tax delinquent properties into affordable, habitable properties that enhance community pride, create additional tax revenue, and support our most vulnerable neighborhoods and citizens. And when we talked about, we've had conversations about how there's a lot of misunderstanding about what a land bank is. It's not a bank in the traditional sense of the word, but it's a mechanism for keeping an inventory of lots, of parcels, and how we choose to purchase those parcels and accumulate those parcels and sell them, that will be within the province of the board of directors itself. But theoretically, what it could be is it could be a way to alleviate affordable housing, or to alleviate the affordable housing issue. And so what I mean by that is a land bank is able to acquire properties, rehab, demo. They can discharge liens and special assessments. So if you have a state or a local lien, not a private lien, a land bank is able to discharge that. So that's one thing that a land bank is able to do under state law that other organizations, maybe with similar intentions, but they're not able to do that. We can bid on tax sales, foreclosure properties, and then one big thing about the land bank is that once the property is conveyed, the land bank collects 50% of property taxes on real property for 5 years. So it's for a 5-year term, that money comes back into the land bank almost as a revolving fund of sorts so that the land bank can go and acquire newer properties. So something that the land bank some things that they can't do, that the land bank won't be able to do, is issue revenue bonds and notes, levy property taxes, and exercise eminent domain, and hold property for a nonprofit for longer than 1 year. So if we have nonprofits in town that want to partner with the land bank will be able to take in a piece of real estate, clear title for it, and then give that back to the nonprofit for purposes of affordable housing. And the land bank just can't hold that for longer than 1 year. So the law does dictate how many members are part of the board, and it says there has to be at least 7 voting members, and then from there it can go 9, 11. It has to be an odd number, but at least 7. And it does lay out specific areas that the board has to have knowledge in, and that is why we ultimately brought forward the board that you'll see in a little bit here on the resolution. Under 424, the land bank can only hold a certain amount of property, and for a city like the city of Norfolk, the land bank can only hold 5% of the total number of parcels, and no more than 5% of those could be commercial. So that would mean that the land bank could hold only approximately 550, and I think that for the first couple of years we're just trying to have a handful as we grow. So that's not going to be an issue. In terms of accountability, the land bank has to report to the city. So you'll see a monthly report, probably beginning in February. So there's going to be a monthly report brought to the council indicating what the land bank is working on, how many parcels it holds, projects, things like that. And then on an annual basis, the land bank will have to report to the state by March 1st of every year, kind of indicating its activity for the prior year. Want me to I can keep going, or if there's any further questions. We also have our executive director here. It's going to be Gary Bretschneider. He's going to serve, at least initially, as the executive director for the land bank. So I don't know if you have anything to add, Gary.
I would just add, Mayor, Council, one of the examples would be if an individual had a property that has been condemned, they're out of state, and the demolition fee is exorbitant, they think, they could donate that property to a land bank. We could then extinguish their county taxes against it. That person and their accountant would figure out what that donation would be on their side. But for us, we would receive a house on a property that we'd have to tear down, making the neighborhood better, and then in change, selling it to a home owner or maybe a developer that wants to build an affordable house in that neighborhood to improve that neighborhood. So those are some avenues that could be used by this. That's just one of the options that could be done out there. And we are required, as Danny mentioned, we do have to report annually to the state legislatures what we're doing. So,
Gary, is there any way that a specific individual or business, if they wanted to, they could donate to this land bank to help build the funds?
yeah, anyone at this time would be welcome to talk to anyone that has a property that they're questionable. Maybe the city has started the paperwork on the condemnation. We would gladly look at taking a donation of that type, or if any other individual wants to look at a way of donating to our land bank, we would totally look at that, because our goal is to increase properties that can be used across the infill lots that get filled in, where they're, everyone goes to a neighborhood and sees a house that's, it's questionable, and if it's one that could be donated or a vacant lot could be donated. They could take advantage of a donation. We could have the lot. We can help another family build a home.
Okay. Well, we'll also have the access, I know in the past, and I don't remember what it exactly was that Val will in time have a couple sets of plans for a house. Can that something that can be advocated into this process and be, so an individual could purchase this piece of property and then need help with skipping out on architect costs and things like that?
Yeah, we'd be happy to help with that too. If they come to us and say they got a 40-foot lot from the land bank, what can I put on it? I don't want to start from scratch, and we could potentially give them 1 or 2 options for free so they don't have to do those architectural costs out of pocket, and they could just kind of come in, get a building permit and go. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
And we have had contractors show interest in the fact of potentially interest in utilizing those lots for affordable property. So that's great when the community steps forward in that part to help us too.
I think another big thing with this is I've been involved a little bit in conversations with staff is this is affordable housing. So you're not going to put a $300,000 or $400,000 house on this. So this is another avenue for the city and the community to improve different areas of town. I get phone calls in my ward of neighbors that, what do we do? What do we do with this house? There's nobody there. It's empty. The weeds are growing in the lot. So this is another avenue, another tool, I'll say, to be able to resolve those issues and make the neighborhoods better. And I'd like to commend staff on the time that they put in this because it's been a long process and a lot of effort went into putting this together, and I think it's going to be a benefit to the whole community and the county with the taxes and all that stuff that are going to be put on top of it. So thank you.
Gary?
Yes.
Are we going to be doing other small communities like Tilden or Mill Grove?
At this
Battle
stage,
Creek?
Hayter was a natural selection for us. We have a good working relationship between permits and stuff already with them, so it was just a natural for us to go to them. But since that time has happened, we have been approached by other communities in Madison County and surrounding that would love to potentially join in. And we have that right to let them come in and join us. But at this stage, we're going to walk before we run. But we do have that opportunity to add regional communities that could come in here and add with it, that we can then go to their community and help them do some of the things we're looking to do.
Yeah. Has the county showed interest in this?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll let Danny
Yeah.
visit with that a
Yes,
little
so,
more.
so I was approached by a county commissioner. I know that they're interested in this, as well as Gary said, a number of our villages, our municipalities within Madison County are interested. Again, yeah, we wanted to walk before we ran, also understanding that to start the land bank, we are utilizing city staff. We're authorized to do that under state law, but it would be really, really difficult as we start to expand our geographical boundaries for staff to travel too much and to take care of, if there's multiple cities, having houses within those cities. Because right now it's going to be a pretty tight group of staff, and so we want to make sure that we can build it, grow it, fund it before we start bringing in others. But that's absolutely the goal, and for it to be self-sustaining, so that at some point we can hire an executive director first. At some point down the road, that the Omaha Land Bank, obviously Omaha's a lot bigger, but they're self-sustaining and they have a number of people on their staff so it operates outside of the city of Omaha.
When we initially did an exploratory on this, we had Wakefield, Wayne, Pierce, Madison, all these communities came into this room here and we sat down and discussed it. All are very interested in it. But they also had the concern Danny had, well, we're in Wakefield, how do you guys travel here to do this? So, but if we can help in any way with those groups, we will. And hopefully in a year from now, we'll be able to come back here and give some positive reports.
Yeah, and if we have a couple communities that want to do one on their own and they just want a model and they want some help, and then eventually we can all grow together, that would be something that we would be open to
Yeah,
helping
they're
with
allowed
as
to bring
well.
us a project into our land bank and we can give them guidance and assistance in doing it. Say Battle Creek has one. They can bring us a project and then it can get
Yep,
taken.
it'd be a project agreement, so then it would lay out the funding and how they're they're contributing and things of that nature. So until then, if there's, until we would bring somebody else into the interlocal, there's other mechanisms for helping out in those communities. It's just,
Right.
we're starting small.
Great. Thank you, Danny, and thank you, Gary, for those explanations. You mentioned a required annual report to state legislature, but you referenced a monthly report to the city council?
Yes, the city council will get one monthly. We plan on having monthly meetings beginning the week of January 22nd. So the first one that would come before the council would be in February, and you will get one every month for as long as the land bank exists.
Very good. Note on process here. So the next two agenda items also pertain to the establishment of the land bank. But first, because of state law, anywhere outside of Omaha and Lincoln has to be established as a regional land bank. That is why we're starting here with the interlocal agreement with the Village of Hayter, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion on that? Any public input? Okay. Seeing and hearing no further discussion, please vote.
Voting in the affirmative, Granquist, Webb, McCarthy, Murin, Norton, Clausen, Hildebrand. Abstaining from the vote, Arns. Motion carries.
All right, item 20 would look for a motion to consider approval of ordinance number 5861 to create and provide for a Northeast Nebraska Regional Land Bank.
I'll offer consideration of ordinance 5861.
Second.
Okay, motion second. Any further discussion or anything you want to add to this item, Danny?
This is not necessary under the law. This is just one of those things where we want to create a place for this, a landing page within our city code. So while we would, of course, request that it passes on all three readings, if that doesn't happen, that doesn't mean anything for the next agenda item.
Okay. Any questions or discussion on that? I'll just take the chance then to say I want to provide this as an example to the public of great staff work, city staff working proactively together. Danny, Val, Gary, Randy, everyone, Andy, that's been involved in this. It's been a lot of work from start to finish, but I think it will all certainly be worth it in terms of us doing what we can to rehab, improve, and utilize more affordable housing in our communities. With that, if no further discussion on this, I would ask for a short title, please, Brianna.
An ordinance of the city of Norfolk, Nebraska to enact Chapter 12.1, Article 1 of the official city code to create and provide for a Northeast Nebraska Regional Land Bank as authorized by the Nebraska Municipal Land Bank Act, which authorizes two or more municipalities to create a municipal land bank to facilitate the return of vacant, abandoned, and tax delinquent properties to productive use, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Please vote.
Voting in the affirmative, Granquist, Webb, McCarthy, Murin, Norton, Clausen, Hildebrand. Abstaining, Arns. Ordinance number 5861 carries on first reading.
Seeing no opposition, I'll offer for surpassing the rules and passing on second and third.
Okay, motion second to suspend the rules and approve on second and third readings. If no further discussion, please vote.
Voting in the affirmative, Granquist, Webb, McCarthy, Murin, Norton, Clausen, Hildebrand. Abstaining, Arns. Ordinance number 5861 carries on second and third.
Item 21 would entertain a motion to consider approval of Resolution 2023-67 to appoint the following individuals to the Land Bank Board: Brian Lundy, John Kuba, and Benjamin Temple for 1-year terms. Rob Merrill, Randy Wilcox, and Rod Johnson for 2-year terms. Sasha Bond, Myra Mendoza, and Juan Sandoval for 3-year terms.
I'll make a motion for consideration of approval of resolution 2023-67.
I'll second that.
Motion second. Danny, anything to say on the formation of the board formally here?
Yes, just that I would say that of all the ingredients, the pieces to the puzzle, if you will, of the land bank, I think the most exciting one, I think, and I think staff would agree with me, that we really assembled an incredible team here. We met so I'll read through just some of the requirements that we had to have. We had to have members that represent the following: Chamber of Commerce, experience in banking, real estate development, realtor, experience in nonprofit or affordable housing, and a member with experience in large-scale residential or commercial property rental. So we started to look, and we reached out to a handful of people. We wanted some diversity. We wanted people that were clearly passionate about affordable housing, and I think we met that goal, and we're really excited for those individuals, and I think most of them are here tonight as well, and they're excited to get going. In addition, there's a number of individuals that are appointed as non-voting members, and that they are all required under state statute. And we have 2 from the Village of Hayter, and I believe 1, maybe 2 of them is here tonight, and we're happy to have them as well as Councilman Snorton, who's excited to be on board. Right, Councilman? Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Danny. And as Danny said, it looks like most, if not all, of the appointed members are here tonight. We thank you very much for being willing to step up and help in this regard. We know it's everyone's favorite pastime to volunteer for more board work, right? But this is meaningful, and it will have impact and generational impact if done right. And with, as Danny said, the team assembled here, I think it will be done right. So thank you once again. Any other discussion on this, council, or public input? Okay, hearing none, please vote.
Voting in the affirmative: Rehnquist, Webb, McCarthy, Urin, Snorton, Clausen, Hildebrand. Abstaining, Arns. Resolution 2023-67 is adopted.
Very good, and congratulations to the newly appointed Land Bank board members. Item number 22, I would look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5862, authorizing the sale of property located at 1001 Northdale Drive to Todd Borgmeyer for $39,000.
I'll offer for consideration ordinance number 5862.
Second.
Motion second, and for some background on this, we'll hear from Lyle Lutt, our operations manager. Lyle.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, this item number 22 and 23, same topic here. November 6th, talked to the City Council and citizens about possibly selling the property at 1001 Northdale Drive, vacant lot, city-owned for quite a while. December 7th, had an auction right here in the council chambers. There's about 8-10 people that attended. Gary was actually the auctioneer. There's a couple folks that were on the phone as well. At the conclusion of which is what you see in front of you tonight is a purchase agreement for $39,000 for that parcel. If this gets approved, first off, the auction was wonderfully ran. It was a great experience. Gary nailed it, knocked it out of the park. If this gets approved tonight, we'll start the remonstrance period, the advertising that goes along with the remonstrance period, with the intent of closing on this prior to the conclusion of May of next year. Sooner if possible, but that's what's depicted as the closing date. With the proceeds of this going to fund what we've been talking about for the last 15-20 minutes to the land bank, so that it can be used for cleaning up properties, tax delinquent purchases, tax delinquent auction purchases, and whatever else could be used to fund and leverage that sale into further enhancing the acquisition and cleanup and return to the private sector properties that are dilapidated. With that being said, what questions do you have about the purchase agreement, excuse me, the purchase agreement, the auction, or anything else? Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lyle. Thank you for seeing this process through beginning to finish. Any discussion or questions, council, or public input? Right, hearing none, short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to authorize the sale of city property, provide the terms of sale, and authorize the mayor to execute and deliver a quitclaim deed to the property, provide for a remonstrance to said sale as provided by law, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5862 carries on first reading.
Seeing no opposition, I'll make a motion we suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5862 on second and third.
Second.
Motion second to suspend the rules and approve on second and third readings. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5862 carries on second and third.
Item 23 would look for a motion to consider approval of a purchase agreement with Todd Borgmeyer, authorizing the sale of property addressed as 1001 Northdale Drive for $39,000.
I'll make the motion.
Motion second. Any further discussion on this? Public input? Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
Takes us to item 24. I would look for a motion to consider approval of ordinance number 5863, creating Water Extension District number 129, which generally provides for the extension of a water main north along U.S. Highway 81, approximately from Sheridan Drive north to Eisenhower Avenue.
Mayor, I'd just like to make it known I'll be abstaining from item 24 and 25.
Okay.
I'll make a motion for consideration of approval of ordinance 5863.
Second that.
Motion second, and for some background on this, we'll hear from Steve Ramus, our Public Works Director. Steve.
Mayor and Council, before you is a creation ordinance for a water extension district. This would be from Sheridan Avenue north along Highway 81 up to Eisenhower. Over the last couple years, we've had inquiries from a couple landowners that would be involved in this, specifically the owners of parcels 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, historically under the ownership of Richard and Leanta Abler. They're in the process of selling that the first 3 of their parcels off to a developer, and I believe you'll see some actual construction activity up in that area right now. The other one that's inquired several times is parcel 11, RBBA Investments. They have about a 10-acre parcel over there. They've also expressed interest in development of that parcel. Over time, as we've had conversations about a potential extension district and water service in that area, parcel 12, Custom Feeds, has also expressed interest that should we ever do an extension, they'd like to be part of that. So we had presented the more recent conversations with a couple of those landowners to council here back in October. Discussed the interest, told them we were going to go out and visit with the remainder of the landowners, which we did. We've had contact with all the landowners out there. We've had nobody that was not supportive of the project. City staff has been eyeing this project from a water quality perspective. Currently, there's a 16-inch transmission main that comes up Riverside, crosses over 81, and terminates at MP Global and provides service into MP Global and over to the High Patrol Office. Due to the size and volume of that transmission main, we have water age issues there. During the winter, we'll see water age up to about 14 days. During the summer, we're in the range of 5 to 7 days. Generally, we like to see our water levels in that 5 and below. We really like to see them below 10 if we are going to start to see some high age. So just from a water quality perspective, it would be very desirable for our system to get that looped so that we can bring that 14-day age we see in the winter back down into that mid-single digits. What you have before you then would be an extension district for purposes of providing water service, again, along those parcels. There are a couple parcels there I'll point out that are not included in the district. The larger of the parcels is the Hillcrest Cemetery. That is a very, very large parcel. Once this project gets wrapped up, we analyze the costs and come back to the Board of Equalization to substantiate those costs and show benefit to the properties. and it would be very, very difficult to show any benefit to Hillcrest Memorial Park, and it would be very difficult for them to create any mechanism for paying for those services. The other parcel would be directly south of Hillcrest Memorial Park. There is a landowner there. It's a residential property. He has two parcels, one adjacent to Sheridan, one directly behind that. He is in the process of replatting that into a single parcel. He already has water service, so again, it would be hard to show any benefit to that parcel. So I can answer any questions you have about this.
That's our cue, right?
That's your cue.
Okay. Any questions for Steve on this?
I guess the only question I have is, what do we do to make up for the footage that would go in front of the cemetery?
So we would cover that just as a city cost. You know, we generally cover city costs on transmissions mains. This isn't a transmission main, but the water quality component of this particular project justifies the city covering that cost to get this looped in.
We have the money in the budget for it.
We have the money in the budget for it, yes.
Any other questions or public input?
Jim McKenzie, I just had a question. Of the $700,000 cost, how much of that will be assessed? About 2/3 would be assessed.
Okay. Okay. And is there a standard policy for how we determine how much of that gets assessed?
Typically, well, on a typical project, we would assess, we assess all the adjacent parcels. What we don't assess then is any oversize. So our city code establishes the standard size of water mains and sewer mains at 8 inches. If we install a 12-inch or 16-inch, then we pay that differential as an upsize cost. So that is in city code. Some of the other things we'll absorb at times is where there might be a major crossing. In this particular case, that portion's being assessed. Just a little bit project dependent in some cases. But I would say in general, the city upsize cost is where we look from a policy perspective.
And then is this going to be funded with current revenues, or will we issue debt?
This will be funded with current revenues, yeah.
Okay. All right.
We generally try to, and we'll be presenting some information in January along this as we bring our water rate increases to council. But we generally carry a budget somewhere or cash balance in there that allows us to consume these types of costs when they come up. I mean, a city of 25,000 and growing, these things come up fairly regularly, and so we have a budget that allows that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Steve, could I just clarify something with you? So the cemetery and the lot south of it are not actually included in that water extension district, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. We just have to pass through to get up to that district.
Correct.
Okay.
There'll be another conversation on the assessments on that, right?
Correct. Once the project is constructed and all the actual costs are in, we will sit down as staff and kind of give that our first blush on how we see those costs being divvied up, and then we'll bring that back to a subcommittee for presentation and conversation.
Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, short title, please.
An ordinance creating water extension district number 129 in the city of Norfolk, Nebraska, establishing the outer boundaries of the district, designating the size, location, and terminal points, referring to the plans, specifications, and engineer's estimate in connection therewith, and provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and for publication of this ordinance.
Please vote.
Vote Voting in the affirmative, Rehnquist, Arms, Webb, McCarthy, Urine, Norton, Hildebrand, abstaining, Clausen. Ordinance number 5863 carries on first reading.
Seeing no opposition, I ask that we suspend the rules of second and third on this ordinance of 5863.
Second.
Motion second to suspend the rules and approve on second and third readings. If no discussion, please vote.
Voting in the affirmative, Rehnquist, Arns, Webb, McCarthy, Murin, Norton, Hildebrand, abstaining, Clausen. Ordinance number 5863 carries on second and third.
Item 25, I would entertain a motion to consider approval of an engineering contract with McLowry Engineering for the design phase services of the water main for the Water Extension District number 129 north along Highway 81 project for an amount not to exceed a fee, including reimbursable expenses of $46,400. Motion second, and Steve, once again, for background on this, please.
Now my mic's on? Yes. This is a contract with McLowry Engineering for design services on the Water Extension District. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, we do have construction activity and currently going on over there on a couple of those lots, and they are desiring water as soon as possible, as soon as we can get it there. We're going to be asking McLowry to really light the fire under this one. We intend to submit engineering drawings to the Department of Health and Human Services in early January to start their review. We'd like to, our hope here is to have this on the street for bids late January, be opening bids in February and awarding a contract no later than March for construction of this. So moving quickly here, but we have within the estimate for the project, there's just short of $80,000 budgeted for engineering costs. There would be a subsequent agreement to this for some construction and observation, construction management assistance. We do anticipate that this is hitting us at a fairly good time, so we'll probably utilize some city staff, Dennis Watts, Pat Boyle for construction administration on this contract, but so we'll have some savings there already in the budget. But any questions?
It appears not. No questions. Any further discussion or input? Hearing none, please vote.
Voting in the affirmative, Rehnquist, Arns, Webb, McCarthy, Murin, Norton, Hildebrand, abstaining, Clausen. Motion carries.
Okay, not quite done. Last but not least, we reserve space for our quarterly public comment period. While no council action can occur at this time, we do allow for any citizens to come forward with comments, accommodations, airing of grievances, feats of strength. It is Festivus season. Anywho, all right.
Yeah, Festivus for the rest of us. But anyway, I haven't been to a council meeting in a long time. In fact, I haven't been to one in this chamber, so it's been a long time.
Can you state your name for the
I'm
record,
sorry,
please?
Scott Williams. I live at 1111 Nebraska Avenue. I'll get this in here. I just wanted to commend staff and the elected officials on the time that it takes to get these projects brought to fruition. This land bank thing, I remember talking about this when I was on the chamber board, and that was a century ago. But the streets, I love going through the roundabout on First Street. I've gone through there at school days, school times with picking up grandkids. I've gone through there picking them up after school and before school. That seems to work great. And I know Benjamin Avenue was a long slog, but I think Norfolk's going to be better for that whole project getting done. And I just wanted to give you guys and staff, guys and gals, all thank you for that. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you. Accommodations, I just threw that out there. I didn't really expect it, but we'll take it. We'll take it. Anyone else?
Jim McKenzie, by now I'm sure you know my hesitation on the use and possible overuse of TIF. I'm not saying all TIF is bad, but its overuse certainly is. At the present time, you have no TIF policy. I've encouraged you over the last year to develop a TIF policy. Everyone who does any kind of residential or commercial development or just plain business renovation should apply for TIF. It's a free tax break just for the asking. The city has created a dependency on TIF and puts those who do not apply for TIF at a financial disadvantage. That dependency will only get worse with a lack of a cohesive and affordable TIF policy. How much TIF have you approved just this year? The previous request alone tonight was for $5.7 million, including interest. If you approve $15 to $20 million every year, that will ultimately be $15 to $20 million of property taxes that will have to come from other taxpayers every year, year after year. The citizens are becoming weary of constant tax breaks to business owners while they continue to pay higher and higher property taxes. The city portion of the property taxes on my home increased 126% in 9 years. That's almost triple the rate of wage increases over the same period of time. That's without any improvements to my home. My other properties increased similarly. That's not sustainable. Who is looking out for the average property owner who is just trying to get by? Who is looking out for the person renting who is paying skyrocketing rent costs, partly caused by property tax increases? We seem to give to charities to support the less fortunate, but then vote for multi-million-dollar tax breaks for wealthy business people, knowing full well that those tax breaks will be made up by those same less fortunate citizens. Some of you will say the TIOSA formula will make schools whole through state aid. That's true today, but it wasn't always so. And the state's always tweaking that formula, so that could change again and take away that state aid that makes up for the TIF in the schools. And where do you suppose the state aid comes from? Tax dollars, of course. Nothing is free. Free is not free. Someone always pays, and increasingly it's the average citizen. Some will say these projects will not happen without TIF, but we've had many millions of dollars of projects completed in this town without TIF. Now that the TIF genie is out of the bottle, we're told we can't do projects or development without tax breaks. We need to have a robust discussion on TIF because the city is going deeper and deeper into debt, and there are looming needs such as the police department renovation, but we are told the only way out is more taxes. We've got to have a policy on this TIF. And lastly, I've asked for public comments to be at least monthly, and so far we've done nothing on that. We're only quarterly. I don't understand the resistance to having citizens come up and express their feelings to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment? Seeing and hearing no one, that concludes this meeting of the Norfolk City Council. We are adjourned. Merry Christmas.